In the earlier parts of this training, we explored the foundations of community resilience through GIS. We examined how spatial thinking helps us understand how communities function, where vulnerabilities emerge, and how resilience can be strengthened through policy, planning, and coordinated action. Now, in this section, we move from concepts to real-world practice by looking at case studies that show how these ideas perform in real environments. The capabilities we discussed, risk mapping, equity-centered planning, spatial analytics, real-time awareness, and coordinated operational workflows, become far more meaningful when we see how they are applied under real pressures. Case studies reveal where GIS reduces risk, where it improves decision-making, and how it supports stronger, more resilient communities. These examples bridge theory and practice, showing how cities integrate GIS into daily operations, shape strategic choices, and deliver concrete benefits in mobility, housing, climate readiness, emergency response, and long-term resilience. In this next part of the training, we turn to 4 real-world case studies that illustrate how the concepts of spatial resilience and policy action come to life in practice. Each example represents a different urban challenge, from digital equity and healthy mobility, to housing affordability, climate risk, and transparent development planning, yet they share a common foundation: the use of GIS to create clarity, support informed decisions, and strengthen community resilience. We begin with Orlando, where the geographic approach guides a smart and resilient city strategy built around themes such as connectivity, health, mobility, water, and energy. From there, we move to Seattle, which uses data-driven spatial analysis to understand housing pressures and design more equitable investment decisions. In Boulder County, we see how scenario modeling helps a community anticipate climate impacts and protect residents before disasters occur. Finally, in Mesa, GIS improves transparency by visualizing development across the entire city, enabling more collaborative and resilient planning. Together, these 4 cases show how cities can turn spatial data into meaningful action, building systems that are smarter, fairer, and better prepared for future uncertainty. Our first case study begins with the city of Orlando, a community advancing a smart and resilient city vision. Orlando has embraced the geographic approach, using location intelligence, community data, and spatial analysis to guide decisions that strengthen both innovation and resilience. Through extensive engagement with residents and stakeholders, the city identified 7 priority themes: connectivity, energy, health and safety, placemaking, mobility, water, and materials. These priorities not only shape Orlando's smart city roadmap but also provide the structure for building long-term resilience across neighborhoods. By integrating GIS into planning, operations, and risk-aware decision-making, Orlando ensures that every initiative responds to real community needs, existing vulnerabilities, and future uncertainties. Ultimately, the goal is to enhance quality of life, strengthen sustainability, improve resilience, and promote equity for all residents. One of the clearest examples of Orlando's geographic approach appears in the way the city tackles digital inequality. Using GIS, the team combines census data, real-time internet speed measurements, and community feedback to map exactly where connectivity gaps were the widest. Instead of applying a one-size-fits-all solution, the city used this spatial insight to make highly targeted interventions. They introduced 4G hotspots in key locations, launched tablet lending programs in community centers, and installed solar-powered Wi-Fi tables that continue operating during power outages or emergencies. What stands out here is the impact. Improving digital access directly strengthens community resilience. When residents have stable, reliable connectivity, they can maintain access to education, employment, healthcare, and emergency information, especially in moments when it matters most. So connectivity becomes not just a service, but a core element of a resilient urban system. This visual represents Orlando's healthy mobility approach, which connects mobility planning with community health outcomes. Using GIS, the city analyzes how land use, urban design, and transportation patterns influence the health of different neighborhoods. The model helps establish baseline health projections, forecast likely health conditions, and identify which areas are at higher risk for issues such as high blood pressure or asthma. What makes this powerful is that mobility isn't just about moving people, it's about shaping healthier, safer communities. By understanding where risks are concentrated, the city can prioritize improvements such as walkability, safe routes, green spaces, and transportation access. In other words, preparing for the future of mobility, whether through smarter street design or emerging technologies, also prepares the community for better long-term health and resilience. Building resilience starts with understanding how a city behaves before a disruption occurs. This tool is a great example. By analyzing turning movement counts, traffic patterns, and peak hour behavior, the city can anticipate where congestion, delays, or emergency access issues may arise during unexpected events. This type of detailed mobility intelligence becomes critical when planning for storms, evacuations, infrastructure failures, or any scenario that requires rapid, reliable movement across the city. When communities prepare in advance, they move from reactive crisis management to proactive resilience building. Looking ahead, VHB's Smart Community Vision expands on this foundation. The next steps include deeper real-time analytics, predictive modeling, and integrated dashboards that connect mobility, health, equity, and environmental data. This means smarter planning, faster response, and stronger, more adaptable communities ready for whatever comes next. Our second case study takes us to Seattle, a rapidly growing city where rising housing costs and population pressures have made affordability one of the most urgent planning challenges. Seattle's response has been to adopt a fully data-driven, geographic approach, bringing together demographics, land use patterns, transit access, and community needs to guide housing decisions. This framework allows the city to understand not only the scale of the housing shortage but also where new investments can deliver the greatest long-term, equitable impact for residents. With this foundation, Seattle is reshaping how it plans, prioritizes, and designs affordable housing for the future. Affordability challenges in Seattle vary widely from neighborhood to neighborhood. Using GIS, planners mapped areas with high rent burden and displacement risk to identify where pressures were greatest. They also analyzed vulnerable populations and evaluated each neighborhood's access to transit, jobs, schools, and healthcare. By layering these insights, the city built a comprehensive housing landscape that revealed where multiple vulnerabilities overlapped, guiding more equitable planning decisions. This slide shows Seattle's housing location scoring tool, one of the city's most important decision support resources. The tool evaluates neighborhoods based on their proximity to transit, jobs, healthcare, schools, parks, and other essential amenities. It empowers planners to identify opportunity-rich areas where affordable housing will support long-term stability, mobility, and community well-being. In short, it helps determine not just where housing can be built, but where it should be built to achieve equitable outcomes. After priority areas were identified, Seattle conducted deeper analysis in the Eastlake neighborhood using site suitability tools, now part of the Policy Validation app. The city assessed land potential, zoning compatibility, infrastructure readiness, and proximity to essential services. Using ArcGIS Urban, planners then created realistic design scenarios to visualize different building forms, density options, and policy impacts. This ensured that decisions were transparent, data-driven, and aligned with both community needs and long-term city goals. Affordable housing is also a core component of Seattle's resilience strategy. Stable, well-located housing strengthens community health, economic stability, and the ability to withstand future disruptions, whether environmental, economic, or infrastructural. Seattle's next steps include adopting more predictive analytics, expanding real-time monitoring, and integrating multiple datasets into a unified decision-making platform. Through these advancements, Seattle is moving toward a smarter, more adaptive, and more equitable future. Our next case study takes us to Boulder County, Colorado, a community that experienced one of the most damaging floods in its history in 2013. The event exposed critical vulnerabilities in both infrastructure and neighborhoods, demonstrating the need for a more comprehensive and anticipatory approach to climate resilience. In response, Boulder County partnered with Atkins and began using the City Simulator, a powerful scenario-based planning tool that integrates climate projections, infrastructure data, population distribution, and land use patterns. For the first time, the county could visualize how different climate events, such as extreme rainfall or rapid snowmelt, would impact roads, utilities, homes, and residents. This case represents a significant shift. Rather than reacting to disasters, Boulder County is now building resilience through data-driven foresight, helping the community understand its risks and prepare for the future. In 2013, Boulder County faced an extreme flooding event that caused widespread damage to transportation corridors, utilities, homes, and entire neighborhoods. Roads were washed out, bridges failed, and emergency services struggled to reach isolated communities. What became clear after the disaster was that the county had underlying vulnerabilities that weren't easily visible through traditional planning methods. The flood wasn't just a physical event, it was a social one. Residents with limited mobility, low-income households, and remote rural communities were disproportionately affected because they had fewer resources and more limited access to essential services. The county realized that resilience planning couldn't focus solely on infrastructure. It needed to understand who was at risk, where, and why. This event became a turning point, driving Boulder County toward a more integrated, county-wide strategy that connects physical infrastructure risk with community vulnerability and service accessibility. This slide shows one of the most powerful outcomes of Boulder County's work with the city simulator. Using detailed hydrology models, transportation networks, and land use data, the simulator generates thousands of future flood scenarios. What you see on this map are the projected disruptions to daily trips caused by flooded infrastructure, roads, bridges, and critical connectors that residents rely on every day. The size of each blue circle represents the number of trips disrupted over the long-term simulation period. We can also see in the inset chart how different types of flooding, roadway flooding, workplace flooding, and home flooding, affect the community in very different ways. This multi-layered insight allows Boulder County to pinpoint which corridors are most vulnerable, which neighborhoods would be cut off, and where infrastructure upgrades would have the greatest impact. Instead of planning based on past disasters alone, the county can now anticipate how future events may unfold and proactively design a more resilient transportation and community network. The insights generated by the city simulator didn't stay as maps or charts, they directly shaped Boulder County's resilience strategy. Once planners understood which corridors would face the most severe disruptions and which neighborhoods were likely to become isolated, they could prioritize infrastructure upgrades with far greater confidence. This meant strengthening bridges, elevating critical road segments, and reinforcing drainage systems in the areas that mattered most. Equally important, the simulator highlighted the communities most at risk of losing access to essential services. These insights informed land use decisions, emergency access planning, and long-term investments in transportation and public safety. The county can now ensure that vulnerable residents, especially those living in rural or difficult-to-reach areas, remain connected during future climate events. Overall, Boulder County experienced a significant shift, moving away from a reactive, disaster response mindset and toward a proactive, data-driven resilience plan. The simulator enables the county to anticipate risk rather than simply respond to it, laying the foundation for a safer and more climate-ready future. As our final case study, we turn to the city of Mesa in Arizona, one of the fastest-growing cities in the region. With rapid development came increasing complexity, new projects, expanding infrastructure demands, and rising expectations for transparency. Yet many of these projects were difficult for residents and even internal teams to fully understand, especially their potential impact on mobility, services, and neighborhood character. Mesa recognized that to plan responsibly for the future, it needed a clearer, more transparent, and data-driven approach. By adopting GIS, the city gained the ability to visualize development patterns, identify risks, and understand community needs in a more holistic and meaningful way. This became the foundation of a more resilient, forward-looking planning strategy. This slide shows the City of Mesa's active development sites map, which provides a live, centralized view of every development project happening across the city. With this map, planners and residents can explore each project in both 2D and 3D, instantly understanding its location, scale, height, and relationship to surrounding neighborhoods. What makes this tool especially powerful is that it turns complex planning information into something intuitive and accessible. Residents can simply click on a project to see what is being built, where it will be located, and how it may affect mobility, services, or the look and feel of their area. For Mesa, this transparency has significantly improved community engagement and reduced misunderstandings around major development proposals. In short, this map helps everyone, city staff, decision-makers, and the public, see the same information, which is a critical element of resilient and collaborative urban planning. As we close this case study, Mesa's experience shows how GIS can fundamentally strengthen urban resilience. By visualizing development activity across the entire city, Mesa gained a deeper understanding of how projects influence mobility, infrastructure, services, and neighborhood character. This level of insight allows the city to plan proactively rather than reactively, anticipating challenges before they emerge. Equally important, the transparency created through GIS has strengthened trust with residents. People can clearly see what is being built, why it matters, and how it may affect their daily lives. This shared understanding encourages meaningful community engagement, which is a critical component of any resilient city. In Mesa's journey, GIS became more than a technical tool. It became a framework for openness, collaboration, and long-term resilience. A city that sees clearly can plan clearly, and ultimately, grow more sustainably. When we compare the 4 case studies, a consistent pattern becomes clear. High-quality spatial data provides the foundation for understanding community needs, vulnerabilities, and long-term risks. Real-time situational awareness then builds on this foundation, helping cities and agencies act with greater transparency, speed, and clarity. Suitability analysis gives decision-makers an objective, repeatable framework for evaluating where investments should be prioritized, whether for housing, mobility, climate adaptation, or public services. Smart, interactive maps also play a crucial role by keeping people connected to essential information, services, and resources, especially during moments of disruption. Across Orlando, Seattle, Boulder County, and Mesa, GIS transforms complex challenges into coordinated, resilient, and actionable strategies, showing how geographic insight strengthens every aspect of community well-being. As we step back and reflect, these cases show how GIS strengthens organizations by unifying data, workflows, and stakeholders in a single strategic environment. Because geospatial systems are scalable, they support both day-to-day operations and long-term planning, helping cities and agencies adapt as conditions change. When departments and partners collaborate on integrated spatial platforms, they gain a shared understanding of what is happening on the ground. This transparency not only improves coordination but also builds public trust and reduces conflict. Most importantly, GIS supports a fundamental shift, from reacting to problems after they occur to anticipating risks before they escalate. This proactive, geographic mindset is what enables communities to grow stronger, more adaptive, and more resilient over time.